Hello, do you have a manufacturing company? Have you lost sales to overseas competition? Well, today we're going to be speaking with the Great Lakes Trade Adjustment Assistance Center. They have a wonderful program funded by the federal government to help you regain some of those sales. This can be for training, this can be for a number of things. So, listen as we speak with Scott Jacobs, who tells us more about the program. Hi, Scott. Thanks for joining us.
Hi, Calfani. Thanks for having me in.
All right. So, the Great Lakes Trade Adjustment Assistance Center. Long name. What is it?
Well, I could provide you with lots of acronyms, which I'm sure we'll eventually get into, so a mouthful is not necessarily a bad thing. But what we are is a business assistance center located at the University of Michigan. We specifically work with small manufacturing companies that have been directly hurt by imports.
Okay. So you work with manufacturing companies that have been directly hurt by imports. We'll get into that a little bit more as we go along. You said you're located at the University of Michigan. So how does one find you at the U of M is a very large campus, go blue. How do we find you?
Well, the easiest way to find us is probably online. And it's our URL is our acronym, GLTAAC.org. And that will provide, that's a direct URL, and it will provide information about who we are and where we are.
Okay. But you're actually on campus.
We are on just off of campus on Liberty Street, but most people consider that on campus. The parking is considered on campus.
Okay. So that's wonderful.
Mm-hmm.
And then, so what do you mean when you say that we've a manufacturer that's been hurt by imports?
Well, that's a really good question. We actually run a federal program, and so that is defined within the program. The program is called Trade Adjustment Assistance for Firms, or TAAF, and within that program, which we administer throughout the state of Michigan, it is defined as within certain parameters, and really a company has to have lost both sales and employment, and then we have to be able to document that a significant portion of the sales loss is a result to business that they've directly lost to a foreign competitor.
Okay. And so then you said that acronym was TAAF, and that's Trade
Adjustment Assistance for Firms. Yes.
Okay.
It's a federal program run out of the Department of Commerce, and the University of Michigan and myself run it here in the state of Michigan, as well as we also cover all of Ohio and all of Indiana.
Okay. Hence Great Lakes Trade Adjustment Assistance Center.
Exactly.
So we're actually very lucky in the fact that we have you right in our backyard.
That's very true. And we have more companies that we work with in Michigan, and in particular Southeast Michigan, than in some of the other parts of our territory. Actually, if you look job-wise, it splits out very evenly among our three states. But we work with many more, particularly smaller companies in Southeast Michigan, and thanks in large part to our proximity there.
Okay. So to recap, we have your because there's a lot here, so we want to make sure we keep up with it. Federally funded. Your mandate is to help manufacturing firms that have been hurt by loss of sales to companies overseas.
Correct.
And located at University of Michigan. We can find you online. Give us that URL again.
www.gltaac.org.
All right. And so now that we know a little bit or got a little teaser about what it is that you do, let's talk a little bit more about how it is and who can actually take advantage.
Great.
So when we say small firms, how small is small?
Well, there's actually no size limit to the kinds of companies we can work with. Most of the firms we work with, however, are going to be between about 3 and 50 million in sales, and between 24 and 250 employees. That's actually as a result of sort of the way the program is structured. We can work with any size firm, But the real issue is, have they been hurt by foreign competition?
Right. And so when we talk about that, those parameters that you gave are generally the companies that can actually document that they lost sales to foreign competition.
Correct.
All right.
Yeah, and the way the program is structured, I'd suggest we step back for a second, talk
Okay.
about what actually the kinds of services that we provide, which is through the program, we help, the management teams of small manufacturers step back and do a self-assessment of the business, identify, what kind of things they need to improve their business and, particularly become more competitive. And then we help them bring in outside private sector consultants or trainers to actually do the business improvement projects. So what the program does is we help companies invest in themselves in things like building their human capital, or improving their costing or whatever broad array of things that a company needs to do. We help them do that more quickly and efficiently than they could without the program.
Okay. So again, we talked about manufacturers. So a lot of people, when they think about manufacturers, of course, being in southeastern Michigan, we think about the large automotive companies. But I would venture to say that you probably, of course, deal with a lot of companies that are involved with automotive, but that's not the only type of manufacturing. So could you give us some examples of other firms that maybe you've worked with?
Sure. As a matter of fact, as a result of the way the program is set up, we used to work with very few automotive manufacturers. We work with lots more now, particularly since 2008 and 2009. But a good thing about the way the program is set up is it can really be effective across companies in different industries as well as different sizes of company. The whole goal of the program is to help companies improve their competitiveness regardless of where they find themselves today. So, right now we're working with, several injection molders that serve electronics market, numerous tool and die and machining operations. Those are often automotive, but also heavy equipment markets that they're serving. And, it's really across the spectrum. About 3/4 of the companies we work with are typically making, industrial components.
Okay.
And then the remainder would have their own proprietary products. Again, because of the way the program is structured, it's really able to assist, whatever situation a company is in, and their particular market and industry positions.
Okay. Well, let's talk a little bit about the documentation process. So lost sales, lost employment. I'm a small company. I've been going along, doing my thing, and I look at my books and I realize, hey, well, this year we didn't quite make as much money as we did last year. And then I'm looking at this trend and I'm seeing, oh, wow, this is trending. Do I have to actually be losing money in order to take advantage of the program, or do I just have to be able to document a reduction in sales to foreign competition?
The latter. It's simply a loss of sales. There's really, when I explain it, I try to break it down in, ultimately, there are two, requirements of the program. One is that a company has to be distressed, which is then defined by decline in sales and decline in employment. And then second, we have to be able to document that part of that is a result of business they're actually losing to foreign competitors.
Okay. So now my next question is, I'm a small business, I'm doing this, I've seen the trends. What is it that you're looking for? And so every business is going to be slightly different, but what is it that you're looking for to make that documentation that it was foreign competition and not new pop-up down the street?
Sure. In the vast majority of cases, companies have a very good sense of what's going on and who they're losing business to. Ultimately, what we're going to need, after we document, sales or we identify sales, is we're going to have to identify accounts, where companies are losing business on a year-over-year basis typically, and then we'll work with a company to figure out is this a result of your customer replacing some of your product with foreign source product. And a significant thing is that we actually have to reach out and contact customers and confirm that part of the sales loss is due to foreign competition. From a policy perspective, that's a really strong thing about this program is it's very targeted. As a taxpayer, and as an economic developer or as a citizen, it's important that federal programs are well targeted and delivered to people who are really being hurt. And because we actually contact customers, there's absolutely no doubt that companies that utilize this program have been directly hurt.
Well, that's great to hear. And the other thing that's great to hear is that this is a nice, easy process for the companies, right? So they're going to have their documented sales. They're going to know which accounts they've lost, and then they turn that over to you, and then you do the legwork. That is amazing.
Well,
nice, easy project to use.
Thank you. Yes, and that's really important. I mean, by definition, the companies we work with are distressed. Right now, of the group of firms that we're working with, average year-over-year sales decline was almost 20% before they entered the program, and similarly, they had similar size of reduction in workforce. So oftentimes, companies are significantly impacted.
Right.
And at that point, the most important thing for them to do is to run their business. And what we will do is we'll help the program work for them, both in the getting into the program, as we were talking about, and then to utilize the program to make the improvements that they need to make
Great.
to improve the business. Yes.
So we're going to take a quick break, and then we're going to come back and talk some more about companies and how they actually get involved with the process.
That's great. Thanks, Kalfani.
Thank you. Thanks for rejoining us. Today we're talking with Scott Jacobs of the Great Lakes Trade Adjustment Assistance Center. Scott, when we left, we were just talking about the process that your organization uses to help businesses. Mm-hmm. We talked a little bit about what a business needs to qualify. So I'm a business. I can document that I lost sales to foreign competition. Maybe I can also document, loss of employees. I'm distressed. I'm not sure what to do. I've got your number. I call you. What happens next?
Well, first of all, good work. The program that we run is actually the only federal program that's specifically designed to help small manufacturers that have been hurt by imports. And so what happens when you call is we'll talk about are you eligible for the program? But that really, on a broad brush, usually can take about 5 minutes to figure out, are you eligible? And then the real question is this program going to be beneficial and useful to you in the situation that you find yourself? So now the thing to do is to call, and then we'll talk about, A, here's what the program is, and B, are you eligible?
Okay, so I call. What number do I call?
734-998-6213.
Or I can go to the website.
Certainly. Or you can also email either myself or John Antos is one of our project managers that works with most companies who are inquiring about the program. But we're a small shop, and pick up the phone, send an email. Be happy to talk with you, regardless of how you find us.
All right. And then we'll have that information on the video when they're watching. But all right, so I've called and I contact you and we determine that I'm eligible. What is the magic that you do?
Well, most of the magic that we do is we help companies that are really dedicated to themselves and their business and their workforces. So what we do, through this program is we help companies step back from the busy day-to-day work that they have to do to run a business, and to take a look at the position that they're in, and figure out what do they need to do to make the improvements, to make them competitive in the long run, as well as to make them viable, in the long run. So what that involves is we help companies do a self-assessment across all the functional areas of the business. And that's going to cover sales and marketing work, production, systems, and then the finances. We're going to help them then, that will end up with a codification in sort of a strengths and weaknesses, a SWOT analysis.
Right.
And then that'll be used to inform laying out, what strategy they have to move the business forward. And importantly, that will also include a roadmap of the specific projects that they need to do to make the business more successful. Then, after we put this plan together, we step back and, after we put the plan together, we then will work with the company to go through the projects that they've identified. We'll help them find private sector providers, consultants, trainers, engineers, coaches, whoever that may be, and then we'll help them pay for half the cost to bring those people in to help the company improve themselves.
Okay, so we got a couple of steps in the process here. Obviously, first step begins with us calling you. But we call you, and then once we make that call and we get the determination that the company is eligible, the first real step in the process is for the Great Lakes Trade Adjustment Assistance Center to work with the company to determine, do a SWOT analysis and find out what are the potential pain points.
Well, yes and no. I mean, I've said that we can help a company determine if they will be eligible very quickly. There is then, an actual application called a petition that we have to compile that is really demonstrating that the company is impacted.
Yes.
And that's then approved by the Department of Commerce.
All right.
And then after that, we go through and we help the company develop an actionable recovery plan.
All right. And so stepping through that, the last step in that process, we talked about the 50-50 split in costs. But as we step through, what are the cost structures to participate in the program?
Yes. Well, the application process, there's no charge for. No, and that's really helping the company figure out, A, are you eligible? B, does the program make sense? And then C, pulling together the documentation to actually put in the formal application.
Okay.
Then when we go through the planning process, the company has to pay 25% of the cost, which is typically between $1,000 to $2,000, $4,000 max. And a company at any time can decide this is not what they want to do. That almost never happens, but they always can. And we actually will develop for them a contract that lays out, here's what we're going to do. Yeah. Here's how the program is going to work, and what the costs are going to be, so that they know. And then when we move on to actually implement the business improvement projects that we've documented in the recovery plan, the company will pay for half the cost of the outside consultants or engineers to do the work. Importantly, remember these are going to be distressed companies. So the way the program works is, unlike a grant where a company does the work all on their own and then gets reimbursed, we do the upfront planning part, and then when we're doing projects, they pay for half the cost and we pay for half the cost at the same time. So it reduces the cash flow requirement for a company by half to make the improvements that they need to make.
Right. So a lot of times companies will look specifically for grant funding because they think, oh, it's free money, I don't have to worry about it. But grant funding can be a misnomer in that, as you said, a lot of times grants are reimbursable grants. So the company actually has to come up with the money upfront and then wait for the process of the federal government to go through, accept the information for the grant, check it over, and that can be 30, 60, 90 days before they actually get their payment. Yeah,
well, another key portion is that this ends up very much being a partnership between the company and the TAAC, ourselves. And so we are doing a bunch of upfront planning, but unlike a grant, we're going to identify, most companies do 3, 4, 5, or 6 projects through the program, and we'll identify those up front with the company, and we'll scope those all out, and then they can really concentrate on what kind of providers do we need and want to use. And what we bring to the table, as a partnership, the company knows their company better than we ever will. But what we've done is, we've worked with hundreds of small distress manufacturers, and we understand the kinds of pressures that they face and what that means. The situational analysis that they may miss because they're so focused on their actual company. That's true. Right. Also, we've worked with hundreds of different consultants. So you have some great recommendations for them. Exactly.
So a couple of other things that I want to make sure that we hit before we run out of time here. How many times can I use this program? So I've called, we've been through it. You mentioned that companies may have 4 or 5 different projects. Is that from one SWOT analysis, or is that from multiple times that they've called you over a year, 5 years?
Well, that's a good point. It's another way that this is different than most people think about grants is it's really one time. So we're gonna come and work with a company. We're gonna go through and do a plan based on the as-is situation, and then over the next 3 to 5 years, we'll go project by project. That will already have been approved when we went through and did the planning part. So one-time planning and then implementation of the actual projects one by one, again, typically 3 to 5 years. The most that a company can get through the program is $75,000 of cost-sharing assistance. So we typically are going to work with a company to lay out $150,000, worth of outside assistance, and then, over 3-4 years, we'll undertake the various projects that are the ones that they need to improve, their competitive situation.
So again, a quick recap. This program is directed towards manufacturing companies that have lost sales to foreign competition. So we have to document that. It is a cost-sharing program in that you will work with them to determine specific outside activities that can help them regain their sales, restructure how they operate, and then over a course of time, right? So this is not you have to do it this year. It is over a course of years. They can implement the different programs, and you will split that cost with them up to 50%.
That's exactly right.
All right.
And most of the companies that we work with, we work with them. Typically, it'll take 3 to 5 years.
Okay.
To go through the entire process.
So it's a real partnership. So I'm interested in this partnership. Let's make sure that we have information on how to. Oh wait, last question before we get back to that. My headquarters is here, but my actual production is in somewhere down south. Mm-hmm. Do I still qualify because my production facility is outside of your territory?
Well, the answer is this is a federal program. So there are 10 other centers besides ourselves that are located across the United States that run this same program. If the company is eligible, if they're located in the U.S. and they've been hurt, they are potentially eligible. And we basically work with the company to figure out where are they going to be making the most improvements. Mm-hmm. This is actually a very good example. If a company was going to be doing, they're located in the U.S. and they want to do lots of sales and systems work, perhaps, or things that were company-wide, it would probably make sense for us to work with this company. However, if it turned out that what their real focus was, what they needed to do was, improve the productivity of their operations, it would make sense for them to end up working with the center that covers wherever that plant is located. Right. We'll help them figure that out. Headquartered in Michigan, and even if you have an operation in Michigan, feel free to call us, and we'll help you figure out where does that make sense to do it.
Okay, so on the feel free to call you, let's make sure that we have that information one last time.
Well, you can call our general number, which is 734-998-6238. Ha! Wrong. That is my phone number. Feel free to call that. Our general number is 998-6213. And they could call myself again at 734-998-6238.
And then there's also your website.
Correct. www.gltaac.org.
All right. And so this has been great. I really appreciate you stopping by to let people know about this wonderful program that's out there. Before we leave, any examples that you want to share? Any anecdotes, any stories?
Oh, that's great. This is the best way to get a real full sense of what this program does. Sure. I think the last company that we worked with in Farmington Hills was an auto supplier. I think they just finished the program last year. What was happening to them was they really many of their product lines were becoming uncost competitive, and they needed to make some significant improvements to their operations. But what that did not mean physically changing their operations. That meant they needed to improve a bunch of their systems. So we ended up working with them to implement and train their employees on an ERP system. And that ended up allowing them to improve efficiencies throughout the business. Another company in Oakland County, also an auto supplier, but they're a machine builder for automotive companies.
Okay.
They help build production equipment about the same size. I think both these companies were about 30 million in sales. But this company, fantastic operations, but had never had to formally market or sell themselves. And what happened to them is they were supplying automation equipment, and all of a sudden they started losing business to Mexico.
Okay.
And they didn't know how to go out and sell. So they needed to establish a better sales function, as well as to do some real significant branding, training of the sales force, and sort of develop a comprehensive marketing strategy. And so for that company, that was what we did with them. Bringing up these two examples, I would say that they're good examples, but they're also very focused. Most companies will end up doing both, at least one top-line related project, related to sales or marketing, as well as one more bottom line, either related to cost reduction or productivity improvement, much of which can be worker training, either shop floor or engineering staff. Six Sigma, Lean, or lots of times when companies are becoming distressed, they may have the latest CAD or CAM software, but they don't have the money to train their people.
That's a great point. Well, Scott, I appreciate you stopping out today.
Thank you very much for having me. Great to see you, California.
Yes. And thank you for watching.